And there's this thing called the myth of neutrality, this idea that we can have a neutral public space where you have no one dominant religion. Because if you have one dominant religion, then there's going to be conflict. So that's the whole idea of secularism out of Enlightenment, grew this idea that religion, i.e. Christianity, is a...
Because they never mean Islam or anything else when they say that. It's always Christianity.
No conflict, right? But the point is that out of these wars of religion, we need secularism to save us from Christianity, because Christianity is always going to lead to conflict. And the very sad thing about that is that post-World War II consensus conservative, it's the conservative movement I grew up in, right? I'm a boomer. Con Inc., I call it now. It's because it's a con. Is they buy that. They absolutely buy that there is this neutral place. So I have, and I'm going to tell you about a book here in a minute, but I love Hillsdale College. I assume you've heard of Hillsdale, right? It's probably not too far from where you are. And my daughter went there, which was awesome. And I love Larry Yarn. He's the president. And I became open to Trump because of Larry Yarn, actually, because he started taking seriously his ideas. And so he had an interview recently on his podcast of an Anglican bishop. And he said at the end of it, they were talking about, in fact, it was about secularism and Christianity in this secular world. It was ironic. He said, the idea, and I'm quoting him, the idea of a Christian nation is an oxymoron. And I thought, Larry, how can a Christian nation be a contradiction in term? Well, he knows Aristotle inside and out. And I wrote a blog post about this, that he was begging the question with the best of them. And beg the question simply means to assume the premise. It's assuming something, right? So in most, and this is a lot of conservatives today, it's a fewer, but it's still too many, and it's way too many Christians. But this idea that a Christian nation means we're forcing Christianity on the public, which is not true. In fact, the only true basis for liberty is Christianity. That's what gave us America. That's what gave us the whole English tradition, from Alfred the Great to Magna Carta to the glorious Revolution of 1688 and Puritanism, and on and on and on. So this assumption of this neutral place is a disease. And I believe the beauty of COVID, of God turning something that was clearly meant evil, turned it for good, was to begin to open people's eyes to the fact that the secular thing ain't working. In fact, I heard Tucker Carlson recently, I forget what interview it was, but he said, 5 years ago, like now, everybody I talk to, we're having conversations about God. He says 5 years ago, that wouldn't happen. And he grew up in a basically secular home, lived in DC for 30 years, everything secular, which means persona non grata. God isn't relevant. So you can't have a nation without some overarching faith commitment worldview. It has to be. Where do our laws come from? Who is our ultimate authority? By what standard, right? And this book, I love this book. It's called The Book That Made Your World, How the Bible Created the Soul of Western Civilization by Vishal Mangalwadi. And he just explains so well how there's just no way you can get beyond that. There's got to be something. And it's the Bible that created Western civilization and all the blessings that flow from it. So unfortunately, we've got to educate our fellow conservatives and Christians that it's not like you go to a wedding, and you have all the different cards of the names of the people. Well, in secularism, this idea of a pluralistic utopia, then there's, Islam and Buddhism and, secularism, whatever. And then Christians, we get like, hey, hey, I got Jesus says, no, I'm the Lord over all creation. I created you. I created nations, And we can talk about theonomy and what that means. But the idea is that Christian liberty political liberty is a fundamental result of Christianity.